My granddaughter's engagement party was supposed to be the happiest night of our family's life. I still remember standing in the hallway of the Harrington Club, adjusting my tie in the mirror, thinking that God had finally smiled on us after everything we'd been through. My granddaughter Emily, my son Marcus's oldest girl, she was glowing that evening. 26 years old, smart as a whip, worked her way up to senior accountant at one of the top firms in Charlotte. She had her mother's eyes and her grandfather's stubborn streak, and I loved every inch of that child. And then I heard him. I want you to understand something before I tell you the rest of this story. I am 67 years old. I have buried a wife. I have raised children. I have watched this family survive things that would have broken other people. And in all those years, I have learned one thing above everything else. When something feels wrong, you do not look away. You stand still, you listen, and then you act. That night, I acted. But let me tell you how it started. Emily had been with Derek for 2 years. Derek Saunders, 31 years old, good-looking in the way that men who know they're good-looking tend to be. Smooth talker, always had a compliment ready, always knew when to laugh at my jokes, always called me sir with that easy grin of his. I won't lie to you, I liked him at first. Most of us did. He proposed to Emily on a Sunday afternoon in October, right there in Marcus's backyard, down on one knee with a ring that caught the afternoon sun. Emily cried. Her mother cried. I shook the man's hand and told him to take care of my granddaughter. I meant those words as a promise I expected him to keep. The engagement party was set for a Saturday in March at the Harrington Club downtown. Marcus had reserved the whole East Wing. Family, close friends, Emily's colleagues from the firm, about 80 people in all. My son had worked 30 years in commercial real estate and done well for himself, and he wanted to celebrate his daughter properly. There was a band, a catered dinner, an open bar, the kind of evening that costs more than most people's monthly mortgage. I arrived early, the way I always do. Old habit from my army days. You show up before the event, you get the lay of the land, you never walk into a room blind. I parked, helped Marcus's wife Diana set out some of the floral arrangements, and then took a walk around the club to stretch my legs. My left knee has been giving me trouble since February, and the doctor told me to keep moving. That walk is the reason I know what I know. The east wing of the Harrington Club has a corridor that runs behind the main banquet room, a service hallway, narrow, painted white, used by the catering staff to move between the kitchen and the floor. I was cutting through it to get back to the lobby when I heard voices coming from the small coat room at the far end. I almost kept walking, but something in the tone stopped me. Not the words. I couldn't make out words yet. Just the tone. Low, laughing, loose in the way people get when they think no one important is listening. I slowed down. My knee ached. I stopped. Swear to God, man, she has no idea. That was Derek's voice. I recognized it immediately. Another man laughed. One of his groomsmen, I'd find out later. A man named Corey. She really thinks this is love? Corey said. She thinks whatever I need her to think. Derek again. Easy, comfortable, like he was discussing the weather. Look, Emily's sweet. I'm not saying she's not sweet, but sweet doesn't have a portfolio worth $1.4 million. Her daddy does. You understand what I'm saying? My hand found the wall. Old Marcus is loaded, Derek continued. Real estate, property holdings, the pension, and Emily's the oldest. She gets first cut when the time comes. All I have to do is be the perfect son-in-law for a few years, and then when things get— He paused. I heard the clink of what sounded like ice in a glass. Uncomfortable, let's say. We reassess. And Emily? Emily will be fine. She's a grown woman. People get divorced every day. He laughed again. She'll land on her feet. She's got her grandfather's fight in her, right? Everyone always says that. I stood in that hallway for what felt like a very long time. I am not a man who cries easily. I did not cry then. What I felt was colder than tears and quieter than anger. It was the particular stillness that comes over you when something becomes absolutely clear. All the static disappears. You see exactly what is in front of you, and you know exactly what you have to do. I reached into my jacket pocket and took out my phone. I had learned to use the voice memo app the previous Christmas. My grandson had shown me, laughing affectionately at how long it took me to find the button. I found it now in about 4 seconds. I pressed record. I held the phone steady at my side, and I stood in that hallway, and I listened for another 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Derek talked about the prenuptial agreement he planned to negotiate after the wedding. Get her to sign something that looks fair, but isn't. He talked about a woman named Vanessa in Atlanta. He talked about the credit card debt he'd been hiding, close to $40,000, and how marrying Emily would give him the stability to refinance everything under better terms. He laughed about the ring. Insurance money, Corey. I filed a claim on my grandmother's old jewelry. 2 birds, 1 stone. 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Then I heard movement, the sound of someone setting down a glass, and I walked, calmly, quietly, back down the service hallway the way I came. I found Diana at the floral table and told her I needed 5 minutes alone. She looked at my face and didn't ask questions. Diana has always been a perceptive woman. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the Harrington Club with my phone in my hands, and I played back what I had recorded. Every word was clear. Now, I need to explain what happened next, because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why didn't you walk straight back into that coat room and confront him? Or better yet, why didn't you find Marcus and play him that recording right then, before a single guest sat down to dinner? I thought about it. I sat with that question for the entire 5 minutes I was in that car. And here is what I decided. If I played that recording to Marcus right then, Marcus would go straight at Derek. My son is a good man, but he is not a patient man, and Derek is 31 years old and has $40,000 in debt and a girlfriend in Atlanta and the desperation that comes with both of those things. A confrontation in a parking lot or in a coat room with 80 people 20 feet away and Derek cornered and embarrassed. That is not a controlled situation. That is a situation where things break in ways you can't predict and can't take back. I wanted Derek to have no exit. I wanted him exposed completely, with witnesses and evidence, in a way that left no room for his particular brand of smooth talking. I wanted Emily to see it herself, hear it herself, with her own family surrounding her. Not a he said, she said. Not a family argument that Derek could spin into, her grandfather never liked me. I wanted it to be over, completely and permanently over. So I made a plan. I went back inside. I hugged my granddaughter and told her she looked beautiful, because she did. I shook Derek's hand and looked him in the eye and smiled, because I have been doing hard things my entire life and I know how to hold my face still when everything inside me is anything but still. I sat at the family table and I ate dinner and I watched Derek work the room, laughing with Marcus's colleagues, charming Emily's friends from the firm, putting his arm around my granddaughter's shoulders with a proprietary ease that now made my skin crawl. After dinner, when the band started and people moved to the dance floor, I found Emily. I asked her to dance. She laughed and said I'd been waiting all evening for an excuse to get away from the table. She wasn't wrong. We moved to the edge of the floor, slow and easy, the way I used to dance with her grandmother at functions like this, and after a moment I said quietly, close to her ear, "Baby girl, I need you to trust me. Not tonight, but soon. Can you do that?" She pulled back and looked at me. "Granddad? I'm not going to explain right now. I need you to trust me the way you trusted me when you were 9 years old, and I told you that dog wasn't as mean as he looked." I held her eyes. "Can you do that?" Emily has her grandmother's instincts. She looked at me for a long moment, and something in my face told her what my words didn't. She nodded. Once. Slow. "Okay," she said. "Okay, Granddad." We finished the dance. I went home that night and I didn't sleep. The next morning, Sunday, I called my son. I will not detail that conversation fully, except to say that Marcus, who is, as I said, not a patient man, required 20 minutes and 3 separate plays of the recording before he was calm enough to have a rational discussion. His wife, Diana, sat beside him with her hand on his arm the entire time. I was grateful for her presence. We agreed. We would not confront Derek blindly. We would give him the opportunity to reveal himself completely in a setting we controlled. We had 3 weeks before the next family gathering, a Sunday dinner at Marcus's house that Derek attended every week without fail. 3 weeks to prepare. Marcus called Emily that same Sunday afternoon. That conversation I was not part of. But Emily called me afterward, and her voice was quiet and steady, and she said, "I need you to tell me exactly what you heard, Granddad. Every word." I told her. Every word. There was a silence on the line that lasted long enough that I said her name. "I'm here," she said. "I'm okay." Another pause. "He mentioned Vanessa. I found a name in his phone 3 months ago, and I asked him about it, and he told me it was a client." She breathed out slowly. I believed him. "I know you did, baby. I'm not going to fall apart," she said. "I want to be there when it happens. I want to look him in the face." My granddaughter, I tell you. Every inch her grandmother's girl. The 3 weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. Derek came to Sunday dinner at Marcus's house the following week, and the week after, completely unaware. He helped Diana clear the table. He talked to Marcus about the Hornets. He squeezed Emily's hand across the table, and she smiled at him, and I watched her do it, and I thought, this child is stronger than anyone in this room is giving her credit for. I spent those 3 weeks making sure the recording was preserved in multiple places. I sent a copy to my own email. I sent a copy to Marcus's email. I sent a copy to our family attorney, Raymond Park, who had been handling our family's legal matters for 15 years. I asked Raymond to be present at the Sunday dinner on the 3rd week. I told him why. He didn't say much. He just wrote down the date and time and said, "I'll be there, Walter." I also made one additional call, to Corey. I want to be transparent with you about this part. I called Derek's groomsman, Corey. I had his number from the engagement party guest list, and I told him, calmly and without accusation, that I was aware of the conversation that had taken place in the coat room at the Harrington Club. I told him I was not calling to threaten him. I told him that I was calling because if he had any integrity remaining, he might want to consider whether he wanted to be standing next to Derek Saunders 3 weeks from now. Corey was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Mr. Walter, I told him not to. I told him that night it was wrong." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm calling you instead of your employer." Corey did not attend Sunday dinner 3 weeks later, but I appreciated the phone call I got from him the Friday before, confirming everything on the recording, offering to put it in writing if needed. I thanked him and told him I hoped he'd make better choices about the company he kept going forward. He said he was already working on it. The 3rd Sunday arrived. Diana made pot roast. Marcus's younger daughter, Keisha, was there with her husband. 2 of Emily's closest friends from the firm, Brianna and Lena, had been quietly invited by Emily herself. Our attorney Raymond came, and Emily had introduced him simply as an old family friend, which was true enough. Derek arrived at 6 o'clock with a bottle of wine and that easy grin. We ate dinner. Diana's pot roast was as good as it always is. Derek talked. He always talked at these dinners. He was comfortable here, which was exactly what we needed him to be. He had no idea that the ground under his feet had already shifted completely. After dinner, while Diana was bringing out coffee, Marcus said, "Derek, before we get too comfortable, there's something we need to discuss as a family." Derek looked around the table. His grin adjusted slightly, the way a man's does when the room temperature changes, and he can't immediately identify why. "Sure thing. What's up?" I set my phone on the table. I pressed play. The coat room recording is 4 minutes and 20 seconds long. In a room of 8 people, with no other sound, it feels much longer than that. I watched Derek's face while his own voice filled the dining room of my son's house. I watched the grin disappear. I watched something else replace it. First confusion, then recognition, then a very specific kind of calculation, the look of a man running through his options and finding each one blocked. Emily sat directly across from him. She did not look away from his face for a single second. When the recording ended, no one spoke immediately. Then Derek said, That's been taken out of context." He looked at Emily. "Baby, listen. Don't," Emily said. One word, quiet and final as a door closing. "Emily, Corey and I were just— it was guy talk. It wasn't serious. You know how guys—" "Corey called my grandfather on Friday," Marcus said. "He confirmed everything. In writing." Derek's jaw tightened. He looked at me. I held his gaze and said nothing because there was nothing left for me to say. Everything that needed to be said was already on that table. "There's also the matter of the insurance claim," Raymond said, in the mild, unhurried voice of a man who has been practicing law for 30 years. "I've taken the liberty of making some inquiries. Filing a fraudulent insurance claim to fund an engagement ring is, as I'm sure you're aware, a federal matter." Derek stood up. His chair scraped back hard against Diana's hardwood floor. You can't just—" "The ring," Emily said. He stared at her. "I'd like the ring back, Derek." She had already taken it off. She set it on the table between them with a small, precise click. I have played that moment back in my mind many times in the months since. My granddaughter, 26 years old, setting that ring on the table and looking at the man who had planned to use her and her family, and doing it with her chin up and her hands steady. I have never been prouder of anyone in my life. Derek took the ring. He looked around the table one more time, at Marcus, at Raymond, at Brianna and Lena, who had their arms around Emily's shoulders, at Diana, at Keisha, at me. He found nothing in any of our faces that gave him anything to work with. He left without another word. The door to Marcus's house closed behind him. Emily sat for a moment in the silence. Then she let out a long, slow breath, and Brianna pulled her close, and Keisha came around the table, and Marcus put his hand on her head the way he used to when she was small, and Diana quietly refilled everyone's coffee. I sat at the head of that table, and I felt something unknot in my chest that had been pulled tight for 3 weeks. Raymond excused himself shortly after, shook my hand at the door, and told me that the insurance matter had been referred to the appropriate parties, and that Derek Saunders would have some difficult conversations in his near future that had nothing to do with us. Later that evening, after Keisha and her husband had gone home, and Brianna and Lena had finally said their goodbyes, Emily found me on Marcus's back porch. I was standing in the cool March air looking out at the yard, thinking about her grandmother, thinking about the 37 years of marriage we had, and how I had known on our first date, absolutely known, that she was the person I would spend my life protecting. Emily stood beside me and didn't say anything for a while. Then she said, "How did you know not to confront him right away? In the hallway? How did you know to wait?" I thought about it. "Because confronting a man in a corner just makes him fight harder," I said. "I wanted him in the open. I wanted it done right." She was quiet. Your grandmother used to say that patience isn't about waiting, I told her. It's about choosing the right moment. There's a difference. Emily leaned her head against my shoulder the way she used to as a little girl. I almost married him, Granddad. I know. I believed him. I know that too. I put my arm around her. That's not a flaw, baby girl. That's called love. The problem wasn't that you loved him. The problem was that he decided to be the wrong man for that love. That's on him. All of it is on him. We stood there on that porch for a long time. I want to say something to you if you'll allow an old man a moment. I have lived 67 years on this earth, and I have learned that the people who love you, truly love you, will not always be able to prevent the wrong people from getting close to you. Sometimes the wolves are well dressed. Sometimes they know exactly what to say. Sometimes they practice. But I will tell you this. Pay attention to the moments that feel wrong, the small things that don't add up, the explanations that are a little too smooth, the questions you stop yourself from asking because you don't want to seem suspicious. Trust the feeling. And if you're the parent, the grandparent, the older brother, the aunt, the uncle, the one on the outside looking in, don't look away. Don't tell yourself it's not your place. Don't convince yourself that love is blind for a reason. Love is not blind. Love is the reason we see clearly. Emily is doing well. She took a week off work, went to visit a college friend in Savannah, came home with a tan and a new plant for her apartment, and what looked like the beginnings of something like relief. She is 30 months from paying off her student loans. She is being considered for a promotion at the firm. She signed up for a pottery class on Thursday evenings, which she says she is terrible at and which she loves. She calls me every Sunday. I pick up on the first ring. I always will. I am Walter. I am 67 years old. I am a grandfather, a veteran, a widower, and a man who once stood in a service hallway in Charlotte, North Carolina, and made a decision that changed the course of my family's life. I would make it again, every single time.